The color of this pen is royal blue. Welcome to Primary Technology, the show about the tech news that matters. This week we have a big story about Perplexity, the AI startup, doing some pretty egregious things in the background. We have some updates to visionOS 2.0. Yes, I installed the beta. I want to talk about that. Some new things revealed about iOS 18 and Apple Intelligence. And we have our poll results for Trackpad v Magic Mouse and more. This episode is brought to you by you, the members that support us directly. Thank you for that. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Robles. And joining me as always, my friend Jason Aten. How's it going, Jason?
Good. I'm feeling super vindicated that I was able to push you over the edge into installing visionOS 2 onto the Vision Pro that you never use.
When you said I was only going to use it 2 times between now and September anyways, I mean, that hurt, but it was
but
also
you
true.
Know it was true.
It was true, so I was like...
well, here's the thing.
Okay.
It's one thing to be going back and forth about whether you should put like the beta on your iPhone or on the Mac that you use every day, but I'm like, Steven, this is the lowest stakes possible. It'd be like if they put out a beta for Rabbit R1. Like, yeah, just put it on there. Who cares? I will say, there's a slight Humane AI Pin news this week, which we're going to talk about. But I did bring it here in the office, so I'm charging my Humane AI Pin because it was supposedly a big update, the 1.1.4 update, which I can't get it to update after 3 days. But anyway, and do you have a fire extinguisher in your office just in case?
Can I just say this show is not about the Humane AI Pin. I have charged this for the past 3 days. I put it on right off the charger. Every time it says AI Pin has to cool down. And so I've not even been able to use it at the front of the charger. Anyway, that's why these devices are dead.
I do want to say for Steven's sake, Steven has a very well planned out roadmap, and then I log into Riverside and I just stand here and I poke at it and be like, nope, we're not. Just derail this thing from the beginning.
Poking holes, saying random stuff. No, but it's good. It's good. It's a good thing. Listen, we have a ton of 5-star shout outs to do because we are once again a 5-star podcast in Apple Podcasts. I don't know how we did it. No, it's because our amazing community and listeners are leaving us 5-star reviews. So here, I'm going to find my fireworks reaction. Here we go. Yay! Can you do your reaction? How do you do it?
Yeah, I have to turn them back on. Oh,
what symbol do you do? I don't know what hand gesture is the fireworks.
I think it's thumbs, isn't it?
Is it 2 thumbs up or is it the rock? Or that
I just
did
it's
a bubble.
Thumbs down, that's for sure.
Let me shoot some lasers. Hold on. There we go.
You
got balloons, I got lasers.
We're so excited. And if you're listening to this in your car, you have no idea what's happening right now.
Yeah, youtube.com/@PrimaryTechShow. We're trying to do reactions because we're 5 stars. So if you didn't hear last week's episode, we got a 1 3-star review and it knocked us down a whole 0.1 on the Apple Podcast rating. And then everybody showed up. We've now crossed the 200 5-star review mark. So we're a 5-star podcast again. It's amazing. Thank you all. So those who left us 5-star reviews, Rolling Thunder is the guy's name. He said he's a railroader. I don't know if that means he's a conductor or something, but that sounds pretty cool. Red Pixel 09 and many others. By the way, we asked on last week's episode, what should we say for the voice assistant so we don't set off everyone's HomePods? A lot of people said, hey, Iris, which is, the word backwards. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a philosophical objection to that. We can maybe talk about that later, but I'm just worried about it.
Because Iris is a word. It's a different thing. I don't know how often we're going to be talking about Iris in someone's iris maybe one day if it's built into... I don't know. Anyway, other 5-star review shout-outs. Duh Programmer, Cleveland Kid. He's a Magic Mouse user, also battery percentage on. I won't hold it against him. He also requested a shortcut. We'll get to that hopefully in a later episode. Then John GH36, battery percentage on. He shared with us, 14 years old, listening to the show. Thank you for listening. And we have all the demographics, which is pretty cool. Realist Photo, Vive Cuervo, which I feel like is a tagline for a drink, right? I don't know.
Cuervo is a tequila, yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, he said Cuervo with a K, so I guess we don't break copyright. But in Deltona, Florida, fellow Floridian, Andres.pr and Ramblin' Scotsman. Thank you all for those 5-star reviews. That is awesome. And 2 other quick shout-outs before we get to Perplexity. We had a very long-time listener, James Prochnow. He sent us a DM with a fun sketch. I can't say it on this show because it was a secret for the bonus episodes for our members. So you can support the show. You can go to primarytech.fm, click bonus episodes, support us that way or directly on Apple Podcasts, and we'll talk about that in the bonus episodes. And one other shout-out, we actually, in our community, social.primarytech.fm, we have a lot of developers who listen to the show, people who make apps. And so I thought it'd be cool to start giving shout-outs to those who are listening to the show, part of the community. And so this app is called Dark Panel. It's from the maker Ryan Off. What's up, Ryan? He's in the community, longtime listener. And this app is actually for Apple TV. It's a free app, so you can just download it. It's called a Dark Panel. And what's cool is you can load this app on your Apple TV. And, I like the aerial screensavers on Apple TV. That's usually what I have going most of the time. But sometimes if it's late at night and, maybe you're going to watch something with a significant other, but then you start talking, but the room is very dim. Like sometimes those aerial screensavers can be very bright. It just kind of like comes on and it's just real bright, and your Apple TV was in dark mode, so it can be a little jarring. So Dark Panel is just a very simple app where you open it, it will prevent the screensaver from running on your Apple TV, and then you can just choose something very discreet like a clock, or he has some very subtle gradients that can just be on the Apple TV screen. And I thought it was pretty cool. So it's a free app. You can try it out. I like that you can put a little clock in the bottom right corner, very discreet. And so, I actually used it last night because it was kind of late and the Apple TV was on, but I didn't want to go to the aerial mode. So, we'll put a link to that app in the show notes. And let us know if you have an app in the App Store. You can DM me. I was trying to think, how can people get a hold of us? I find, these multiple social platforms, sometimes emails can get, lost. You can actually DM me or Jason. I don't know if Jason's going to answer. That's up to him. I don't know if he checks his DMs. What else? But you can DM us in our community at social.primarytech.fm. It's free to join. And then you can also comment on all the polls and posts and stuff. So, let us know what you think.
I definitely think that you have to do it from within our community, because you have to be in our community. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to be a paying member to be in the community.
No.
But you have to be in the community. You're welcome to just DM Steven on Twitter, X, whatever. But if you want him to mention your app, you have to do it from within the community.
Yes.
I was trying to figure out, why would anybody want their Apple TV to be dark? Because, you can just turn it off. But then I realized, what if you're playing music and you didn't want the artwork up on the screen and you were using it? I literally have never used my Apple TV once to play music. But I do, So I asked about this, and people were like, I use my Apple TV to stream Spotify or Apple Music all the time. And this would be great because then I don't have to have the screen on when I'm doing that. So there you go.
There you go. It's a good app. Ryan, thanks for sending that in. All right, we have big news. Perplexity. I'm going to share this article. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see this article. There's an expletive. I'm not going to say it because I don't want us to get the explicit tag on Apple Podcasts.
Because you can't VidAngel our podcast. So
you can't VidAngel this podcast. But I'm going to share this article. This is a huge report from Wired talking about Perplexity. And the headline, it's one of the best headlines of the year, maybe of the past few years. But Perplexity is a BS machine. And this article goes through a lot of research done by a Wired analyst and also a Rob Knight. I believe he is at Mac Stories, or someone at Mac Stories found out information about this. But Perplexity, which is an AI startup, and was very popular. I saw so many people talking about this on social media, saying it was better than ChatGPT, especially when trying to summarize articles, which will become important in a moment. Apparently, Perplexity was ignoring the robot.txt file for websites, which we talked about actually on last week's episode. This is a little apropos. But that robot.txt file basically is when websites can tell these chatbots like ChatGPT or Perplexity, do not scour our website, do not index our website. We don't want that. We don't want you doing that. Apparently, Perplexity was often ignoring that, basically scraping these websites through like a secret IP address. It was public, meaning that's how it was discovered by the Wired analyst and Mac Stories. But that Perplexity was ignoring that robot.txt file, so that's bad, and that's an issue. We're also going to tie that into Apple Intelligence in a moment. But also that it was just making stuff up, where Perplexity's feature, it said that it would basically, we'll summarize an article for you. We're going to go look at that website and tell you about it. So Perplexity basically offering to, save you a couple steps. Like rather than having to copy and paste the text and maybe put it in a ChatGPT or whatever, like Perplexity would kind of expedite this summarization process. And it was found that it just would make stuff up. Not even change little details of a thing, but just make whole cloth stories up. And Wired tested this by creating a test website. It basically put one line on it, one sentence saying this website is a Wired reporter or something, pointed Perplexity at that website and said, give me a summary of this page. And Perplexity made up an entire story and claiming it to be the summary of that page. So not only was Perplexity ignoring the robots.txt file, indexing websites even though they asked not to be, but also just made stuff up. And one of my favorite parts of this article, you could share your favorite line of it, but I like that it actually calls to Harry Frankfurt's book. The book title is On BS, but it's the full word, obviously. To be honest, it's one of my favorite books because it's a short book, but in it, he talks about the idea of the difference between a liar and someone who is unconcerned with truth. And I love this distinction that the book makes because a liar has to know what is true and misrepresent it, or know what is true and say the opposite. But rather, someone who is unconcerned with truth, which telltale signs of like a narcissist, they actually just don't even pay attention. Like the reality that they make up in their head is just unconcerned with the facts. And so basically this quote here from the Wired article, because these programs, namely like Perplexity, cannot themselves be concerned with truth, and because they are designed to produce text that looks like truth, apt with any actual concern for truth, it seems appropriate to call their outputs BS, which is what Perplexity was doing. So this is not a good look on Perplexity, and they've not addressed it.
I think there's a couple things here. Lots of them.
But I think lots of couple things.
There's a lot of things. I mean, the quote that I thought was super summarized the whole thing was simply that, like, it says Perplexity appears that it's both doing what it says it isn't and not doing what it says it is. And it's sort of like, then what are you doing? But Perplexity is a little bit different because essentially they position themselves as, they call it an answer engine, but like it's a search engine that is using other people's models, and you can actually choose which models you wanted to use. If you pay for Perplexity, you have like access to Claude and ChatGPT and some other things like that. So it's not actually building its own model type things. It's using other AI, and it's positioning itself as like AI powered search engine. So what it's doing is using those models to understand your query and then reframe those prompts to go out onto the internet and find information and bring it back to you. And we talked about this. The standard way of saying to a search engine or whatever, don't index my stuff, is the robots.txt file. And the thing about that is it's always been just like on the honor system, right? There's nothing about that file that prevents you from actually not crawling it. It's just you're depending on the goodwill of like a company like Google probably doesn't want to get the reputation that it is just blatantly ignoring that, because it has enough problems with goodwill when it comes to how it's using content that's on the internet. So generally speaking, as far as I know, Google tends to honor that sort of thing. And so what may happen is a website might be like, you can index our articles, but you can't index these other pages that are technically publicly accessible, but we don't want them indexed in a search engine, right? So we could say we don't want our article or our forum conversations in our social.primarytech.fm. We don't want that indexed because we don't want people to be able to search and find those. We only want that available to members. Like, you can make those kind of decisions.
Right.
What Perplexity was doing is basically just, according to this report, ignoring that. Now, Perplexity also had published a series of IP addresses that it uses to scrape or to index, scrape, whatever, either way. Scrape and index, same thing. Well, pretty close. They're very close neighbors.
They're close.
And so a lot of publishers had actually blocked those IP addresses.
Right.
What Wired did is wanted to know if it was actually blocking it. And so you might use a firewall to actually block these IP addresses. And then when Wired put in what you just described, it's like, how can it possibly come back with anything if we've blocked it and we've told it not to do it? So it turned out it was using an unpublished IP address. And since then, Perplexity has actually taken down the list of IP addresses that it was using, because it's like, if we're going to not follow this, it's going to be real obvious if we're saying one thing. And so that's really the thing. I feel like AI in general already has a trust problem, right?
Right.
People don't trust these AI companies. And so when they say they're doing a thing, I mean, it's just like, this is so closely related to the Sam Altman, Scarlett Johansson thing, right? Please don't use my voice. Okay. Oh, shoot. We just used your voice.
Wink.
It's this is like and this is a pretty common criticism of the tech industry as a whole, right? Like, there are lots of examples of companies that have done this historically throughout time until they get caught. And it's like, oh, shoot, we probably should come up with some rules to follow. So I personally think, like, this for Perplexity is devastating because if you don't trust it, then you're not going to use it, right? And there's a lot riding on this for a company like this. The last thing I'll say is, Adam, the fact that you could say summarize this Wired article and it would just put in quotes that were not in the article, make crap up, which is fundamentally a core feature of all of these large language model systems, is that they just make stuff up. And if you're a publisher, it's really important to you that the quotes that you give are related to a source, right? I can't just make up quotes and put them in a story. And I wouldn't want someone summarizing my article to do the same thing. And so, I think a lot of the AI industry suffers from the same problem. This just happens to be the most glaring example at the moment of a company that's essentially just like pretending like the rules don't apply to them.
So there are a couple of the things from the Wired article. One, apparently there is when you sign up for Perplexity, you do have access to multiple large language models, like you were saying. There is a Sonar Large 32K, which is supposedly unique to Perplexity, but based on Meta's Llama 3. So I don't know if that's actually proprietary, but that might have been the large language model that Perplexity was basically training on these websites. But the two things that are just wild, Perplexity just had a round of funding recently, and it supposedly made Perplexity worth 10 figures as a startup. Yep. And it's just, we talk about AI a lot on these last few episodes, but it's the one area of the economy and maybe business that is succeeding or being successful and profitable. And so this land grab and race to try and be the most important in this world of AI tools or models obviously is causing some to have some pretty poor business choices because they're trying to get to that, trying to be the top. And a couple of the things, when it comes to making up facts, there was a specific example the Wired article brought up was there was a police officer in a case, and supposedly it was the police officer was arrested. I forgot exactly what the detail was, but that actually didn't happen. The police officer did not Perplexity said something that was committed a crime, totally that's not good. And then also it mentioned they talked to a lawyer, and apparently there is a legal precedent for the robot.txt file being ignored, and it's possible that there could be some kind of legal I'm struggling with words today. I don't know. Legal ramifications for Perplexity ignoring it. But the law that it's based on, like many U.S. laws of trying to apply to technology, is vague and not precise. And so companies like Perplexity might just be able to go to court, have good enough lawyers, and talk their way out of it. But there is, I guess, some kind of legal precedent, if not even vague, that could be brought against Perplexity and others who have scraped the open web, like Apple, which we'll talk about in a second. Yeah. But did you have anything else about Perplexity?
Yeah, two other quick things. Only because you said something, and I know exactly what you meant, but it occurred to me that this is a thing that people get confused on very easily. And I think back to just this past week, somebody had posted something on Threads, and I responded to it and made him really mad because that's just, I guess, what I do on Threads.
You made somebody mad on Threads, Jason? That's
but
so
the person
unlikely.
I can't even go back and find it anywhere because they blocked me, which first time I've been blocked on Threads that I know of, but whatever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And all I said was, this is a common misunderstanding of what Apple is doing, because the person had said, who would want this on their device because Apple is using your personal information to train their model, which is not the case. The model has already been trained. Right? There is a very important difference between data that is used to train a model and then data that can be used as an input for a prompt or an answer, right, that you get. Right. So all of these models, for example, Perplexity is not using these publications to train its model. However, most of the models that it's using were trained on the data. So I'm not excusing Perplexity. What Perplexity is doing is the same thing that Google is doing, which is to index websites, web pages, and use that information then when you ask it a prompt. So when you ask an AI large language model chatbot a prompt, it is using that model to understand what you're saying, know where it should go to find the information. It goes out onto the internet, in Perplexity's case, to, just like a search engine would, find that information, and then it uses that model again to present it to you in a way that makes sense. Of course, in this case, it also uses it to just make crap up, whatever. But I just want to just distinguish between those two things. There's actually two problems of what's happening here. Those models were all trained on the open internet. We'll talk about that with Apple in a minute. The other thing I was just going to say, though, is the more I think about this, the more it seems as though Perplexity has essentially the same problem that like the Rabbit R1 had, which is like, we're going to just try to make a promise about a thing, and then we're just going to fake the whole back end of it, and it'll look like it'll look like we're doing the thing we're saying we're doing, until you realize that really we're just running on an Android phone somewhere in the cloud or something like that. Really, that was Rabbit R1.
That was the Rabbit R1, yes.
But in Perplexity's case, it's like making all these promises, and it's not actually doing that. And in the background, it's actually doing something totally different that it actually said it wasn't doing. And so the more we hear about these AI companies, it's exactly like you said. NVIDIA just became the most valuable company in the world, passing both Microsoft and Apple. And it's all because of this race for the AI, because it's H100 GPUs are the standard. That's it. That's what everyone is using except for Apple and its private cloud compute to train models and to run all of this stuff. In every single company, they look at the amount of money. And the funny thing about a company like Perplexity, again, I don't know a ton about it except for that the people behind it have experience at Meta and Google and all these places.
Right.
They're in the phase right now where making money is not important. What's important is getting people to give them money as an investment. Right?
Right.
Those two incentives are totally different, because getting someone to give you money as an investment is entirely based on your promises, whether they are real or not. Whereas making money as a company is dependent entirely on customers being satisfied with the product that they're paying for. And so we're still in the phase of scooping up as much investor VC money as we possibly can, which is why all of these wild claims that don't stand up to scrutiny are being made. In the long run, though, man, the smart company, that's why it's interesting. Like Apple's not, like, it's a publicly traded company. It's not out asking for people to give it money to build Apple Intelligence, right? It's just got to figure out how to make a really good product that people will actually like using. So
I do wonder, and I don't want to get too philosophical, and we've talked about this before, but if as more news like this comes out, well, who knows if it'll be more like this or whatever, but that it might drive people back to traditional reporting, and like, I want to know the person writing the article I'm reading, because I don't know if I can trust whatever summary is being provided, which Apple is going to run into this too, because they are also providing article summaries built in Safari. That's not even Apple Intelligence. They're just offering to do that in Safari on the Mac and the iPhone. Right. I'm curious what people's experience is going to be. I'm sure once it's available to millions of people, there's going to be cases where someone reads the summary. Maybe there's something that's inaccurate. We don't know. Like, this hasn't happened yet. No one has access to Apple's summary tool yet. But if there's even one case where someone reads a summary of an article and there is a misrepresented fact or something just made up or inaccurate, like, that's going to be a big deal on Apple.
Right.
Which the Apple Intelligence thing, this has been making a lot of people upset because there's this page here. I'll put it in the show notes. This is machinelearning.apple.com, but this is specifically about where Apple trained its foundational models. And there is this little paragraph here on the pre-training. And this is Apple's website. We train our foundation models on licensed data, including data selected to enhance specific features, as well as publicly available data collected by our web crawler, Applebot. Web publishers have the option to opt out of the use of their web content for Apple Intelligence training with a data usage control, namely the robots.txt file. The two issues with this, like, for a lot of people, it doesn't feel great that Apple scoured the open web. You know, questions like, does that include YouTube videos? Like, did they look through transcripts of YouTube videos? Did they, like, scour Twitter? Like, who knows? But also, the opt-out part, Applebot has actually existed before Apple Intelligence because Apple would index pages for Spotlight. That's why, like, I did a whole video comparing Siri to the Iris Dingus. I don't know. I did a video comparing them, and you can even ask Siri today on iOS 17 on your iPhone 13. If you ask it certain questions about movie actors or general knowledge, sometimes Iris will actually present the answer for you, not in a here's some web results, but it'll just give you the answer, and it'll say where it came from. And that's due to Spotlight, the which reads as Applebot for up until today, as indexing that website and getting that information. So Applebot might have been allowed by many websites prior to this because it was just Spotlight indexing stuff, but now that same Applebot is including Apple Intelligence, which will mean summaries and other kinds of LLM style training, that's what it did. And yeah, now you can opt out if you're Vox.com, if you're the Wall Street Journal, but this is not super clear, but it seems very likely that the Apple's model has already been trained on all the stuff, and opting out now is kind of moot. I mean, if you publish news articles, I guess any new articles going forward would be excluded from the Applebot, but yeah, it's kind of moot on the foundational training.
Yeah, and I think, you're right about the fact that Apple has been doing this for a long time because it is trying to just give you answers more quickly for search. I wrote an article for Business Insider a couple years ago about how Apple is trying to. It's weird because they clearly want to send as much traffic to Google search as possible because they make a bucket ton of money doing that, but they are also trying to provide those answers directly from Siri. So I have two different sets of conflicting feelings about this, and I don't really know I haven't decided where I land yet, because on the one hand, you look at information that is publicly available on the internet was made publicly available on purpose, right? No one was deceived into publishing a blog post or whatever. That's one side of it. Right. But when you did that, you didn't do it thinking that this was not a foreseeable thing at the time when we established the way we write things on the internet. And listen, I'm somebody who writes things on the internet, so I care about this very much. I don't have nearly as negative emotional reaction to it as some of the people I've heard over the last couple of weeks talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't, but I think it's especially problematic for Apple, who has generally tried to position itself as being on the side of creators in a way that other brands haven't focused on as much. Right. And you can remember when Apple Music became a thing, and I think it was Taylor Swift who published an open letter talking about the point at that point was that Apple Music wasn't paying artists during free trials, and Spotify wasn't either. And Taylor Swift's well, then you can't have my music, right? Because you're getting all of the benefit and the value in upselling customers. And Apple Music, to my understanding now, pays royalties even when you're on a 3-month free trial to those artists, and they've positioned themselves in that way to be on the side of creators. And so if you're Federico Vitici and you run Mac Stories and you just discovered that Apple is consuming all of the stuff you've written over however the last decade or whatever, that is going to make you feel really weird about it, right? But the flip side to that is, I don't know how any of this stuff works otherwise, right? The whole point is you have to have content in order to feed them. And maybe what that means is and you can argue, okay, well then Apple and other companies should pay for it. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, but then you're going to pay a whole lot more to use it. And I'm not suggesting that means that Apple shouldn't pay for it. I'm just saying this is a super complicated topic.
And I think, and I think the Jurassic Park quote, maybe I should have started with that today instead of liar, liar. But what is the Jeff Goldblum says, we could do it, but we didn't think long enough to see if we should do it, kind of thing. And yes, these things don't work, namely LLM models, without a ton of data. But the question would be so is it worth it for the creators for these things to work? And I'm conflicted as well. I don't feel super strongly about it. If it came out that all the transcripts that Apple is now providing for every podcast was part of the training data, because that's under the publicly accessible data, since podcasts are just open RSS feeds, I don't know, maybe I would feel a little differently. I'm also the content that I make is typically time sensitive. Whatever episode I recorded 4 years ago about the iPhone 12, it doesn't matter as much to me. But I also get when people's whole business model has been a blog, and they've had a blog post that for the past 10 years talked about the best way to make a sourdough starter. And that's been their number one article for years. And then all of a sudden, a large language model comes along, takes that information, and now when you ask ChatGPT, what's the best way to do a sourdough starter, it's presenting you that information and really not pointing you back to that website. And even if it did point you back to the website, which is also in that Wired article, such a tiny percentage of people actually click through to that website. Like, they see it as a source, but like, well, they already got the information. There's literally no motivation to actually go visit that website after the fact. So, and again, with Apple Intelligence, if somehow, and I think this is why they didn't do like a general chatbot thing. You can't ask Apple Intelligence, what's the best sourdough starter? Like, if you want to try and do that, it's going to send you over to ChatGPT, and then it's OpenAI's problem. But I imagine one day, like with Iris, and maybe this is, I'm not sure, I didn't really get this information directly. I imagine Iris will try to give you those answers based on the training data that Apple Intelligence received. Is that, I mean, because you can ask, I don't know this. Let me know if you know. So right now you can ask Siri. Oh, sorry, Iris. I don't know. I don't know how we're.
Listen, hold on. Here's the thing. I just want to know. I just want to say this before you go on. I think we should make it our personal mission at Primary Technology to continue saying it, because that will convince people to turn it off on their HomePods. And if this is the thing that we have to do to make people's life. Because listen, I say this somewhat jokingly because I have a lot of respect for the people who keep mentioning it to us.
Yes, I know.
But I do think that this is actually a solution in search of a problem, because it can't be that big of a problem for them. Because most people listen to podcasts either in their car, and I understand there was the whole jerry-rigged CarPlay situation, okay?
Oh, sure,
or you're wearing AirPods, right? And
that is how I consume that kind of content, apparently, because I get this in videos too. Like, if I ever say it in a video, I get a host of comments that are like, you're setting off my HomePod every 5 seconds. I guess people are just listening. And listen, if you're listening to Primary Technology out loud, and so loud that your entire household can hear it, that's fine. Hello,
true.
Family. Hello,
we will
family.
say anything. We will say whatever you want. Just tell me. What do you want me to call it?
That's why I didn't say the title of that Wired article, because keep it clean.
Yeah, exactly.
So right now, if you ask Iris a general knowledge question, like let me just do it, and let's see what it does. Like, what was the name of Theodore Roosevelt's writing crew? That's probably a terribly... Okay, so here we go. So you could see that it actually has a knowledge response. It gave me the answer Rough Riders, which I knew it was. And you can't really see it because it's pretty dim, but it says that Wikipedia was the source. So the Iris does that today, and it's telling you the source. I'm not clicking to that Wikipedia article because I already have the answer. I don't need it. So with Apple Intelligence and having been trained on the publicly available web, will it now offer even more answers, maybe even more in-depth answers? And if so, like, I think that's where the rub comes in. Because now if you ask Apple Intelligence, we don't know, it's not out yet. We'll have to see what it does. If you ask it the best way to do a sourdough starter, and it just gives you the information, and there's a little tag at the bottom to, mybakedgoods.com, which is someone's personal website they've been running for 10 years, is that going to have a meaningful impact on their business, their livelihood, how they've been creating content? Like, we don't have that answer just yet, but I think that's the consternation.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to just say one other thing about what I said, because I want to answer the criticism that I'm sure is coming, and it's fair. Because what has happened is, if you created something, if you create a video, or if I write an article, we are creating some form of value, and we should be extracting the value from it, right? And in your case, YouTube gets some of the value, and in my case, the publisher gets some of that value, and that's the arrangement that we worked out when we decided to use that particular medium. But when someone else comes along, and this has been the criticism with Google for a long time, is that it comes along and it is indexing the web, and for a long time it was still a net positive if you were creating the content, because it was sending you enough traffic. And then when you receive traffic, you can monetize that in one of basically three ways, right? You could monetize it from a brand perspective. Maybe you're like wanting to start a public speaking career and you want to establish yourself as a subject matter expert. And so every time someone comes to your website, your name recognition goes up, and now you can build that brand. Or you're trying to sell a thing. If you're like writing the sourdough starter thing, maybe you have a bakery that you want to get people to come to, right? Or this is a thing that like photographers would do. You write all these tips about weddings, and then people come to your website because they're searching for something, and they're like, oh, I should hire you as a photographer. Or the other way is through advertising, right? If you're Mac Stories, or you're The Verge, or you're Inc., or you're any of these places, the internet's primary source of monetization for a long time, this is true on YouTube, has been advertising. And so none of those three value exchanges happen when someone has just taken all of your content and abstracted you out of it. This is the same thing that's happened with Google snippets, right? Like if Google just takes the answer from your website and presents it as a snippet at the top and you don't get the click, you created all that value for Google, for the internet, but you are not receiving any of it in return. That is the part where people are really upset about, because the entire agreement when people set out making content over the last couple of decades was, I make a thing and somehow I can monetize it when people find value from that thing, either because they pay me money or they click on an ad or whatever it might be. And that is why it's like, you didn't tell us that you were going to do this. You didn't tell us you were going to soak up all this stuff and abstract me out of the equation. That's why people are really upset. And I agree. Like, I think that's the question that has answered, and it's not it is a question that is not surprising that most of these companies are not answering, because they just don't care. They see it as source material to be consumed. We just expect more from Apple. Right. And that's why you started referencing Jeff Goldblum quotes. I was just assuming that you were talking about the scene where they walk up on the giant pile of dinosaur dew, and he's like, that's one big pile of BS. That was a Jeff Goldblum quote I thought you were going to go for, but yours was good too.
That was not it. All right, we have so much other things to get to. I just will say, once Apple Intelligence is launched and available on my iPhone 15 Pro or 16 Pro, however that shakes out, I'm going to ask it, what are the best HomeKit locks and what are the best MagSafe battery packs? And if I see some link to one of my YouTube videos and it pulled the information from it, I'm going to flip a table. No, I don't know.
Flip a table. Will you please record that too?
That'll be a bonus episode.
Just me
flipping a table. All right. There's a bunch of other news I want to get to. I want to talk about visionOS 2 because I did install the beta, iOS 18. Real quick, this is not even an ad, but what it is that Setapp, we talked about it a couple episodes ago. Setapp is a great way to actually get access to a bunch of applications for $10 a month. And you can get apps like CleanShotX, Ulysses, Jason's writing app, Downie, and other apps that you can't even talk about what they do because it's going to be on YouTube. And so what you can do is we're actually trying to win the affiliate race. And so they haven't sponsored this episode. No money has changed hands, but there's a link in the show notes. And if you want to try Setapp today, use that link in the show notes. And we, we're just trying to, if we win this affiliate race, then we get like a bonus thing. And so that's what we're trying to do. So you can do that, but also you can just support the show directly. We would love for you to do that. $5 a month, $50 a year. You get bonus episodes every week, ad-free versions. So I'll cut this portion out, and you get to, I can't say it because it's only in the bonus episode. But anyway, subscribe to the show and you'll hear all the secret stuff for over there. But if you can't do any of that, 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate that greatly. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, which we way over 1,000 subscribers now. So thank you all for doing that as well. And back to the show. Apple Pay Later. Apple is actually discontinuing this service. I never used it once, and I don't know if I knew of anyone who used it, but this was like the weird thing where you could break up a purchase into 4 payments. It only was available for purchases from $50 to $1,000, and it seemed like Apple was like handling this quasi loan. And in a statement to 9 to 5 Mac, which Apple's doing this more and more often, just kind of releasing statements to like 9 to 5 unattributed and not actually doing any kind of official announcement. They're just saying, hey, report this for us. And I guess it's working. I guess they're doing that. I don't know. Is that weird? It's weird, right?
It is interesting that 9 to 5 Mac has gotten a lot of these things lately. Credit to them. Especially Chance Miller, credit to them. I don't know if there was an interesting debate between he and Nilay Patel from The Verge about a month or so ago. Yes. I don't know if Apple is just choosing sites that are a little bit less strict about attribution. And again, that is not shade against 9 to 5 Mac. It's just The Verge has the most strict policy. They just won't publish a statement without a name on it. And Apple historically very much wants to not do that. And in a lot of cases, I think 9 to 5 Mac's position is but we want to get the information out. And in our judgment, in this case, we're fine with the fact that it's an Apple spokesperson says.
Right. So that's the whole statement. Starting later this year, users across the globe, this is Apple's statement to 9 to 5, will be able to access installment loans offered through credit and debit cards as well as lenders, but basically not us. So we're not going to be doing Apple Pay Later anymore. So that's the end of that. I did get an increase on my Apple credit card, which I assume that means the new Mac Pro is coming out. That's what that means. That's what that means, right? If your Apple card limit increases.
But my response to you is just think about how many useless AI gadgets you'll be able to buy now.
Never again. Never again, Jason. Never again. This thing right here, I'm right on the edge because I still have the subscription, Jason. As soon as I cancel the subscription to the Humane AI Pin, it's going to become a paperweight. But also, I'm not using it. Why is this
not that heavy of a paperweight?
Not that heavy.
It's not even good for that.
Because I can't even use the egg because it might catch on fire. So who knows?
Do people still use paperweights, Stephen? Sorry, that feels like a conversation for your other podcast. Never mind.
I never used a paperweight. I don't think people use paper anymore. So
I don't know anyone who's ever used a paperweight.
I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway,
like, what is the scenario you'd use a paperweight for? I have some papers on my desk and I don't want them to blow away inside my office, and so I put something on them.
I guess if you're going to open your office window, maybe.
I don't know.
I will say,
Sorry.
when I was in the orchestra, and my wife is in an orchestra now, sometimes you have outdoor gigs. And so you do have to like clamp down the thing, but we don't use paperweights. We use like clips, like the, the black clips that you just squeeze or whatever. Anyway,
I want to apologize to the Paperweight Brigade. Don't leave us a 3-star review just because I'm questioning whether you're real.
If there's anyone that gets mad about paperweights, they will find you. Whatever trolls.
The other guy at primarytech.fm. Send me your emails. I'm good.
Legit works. Email legit works. The other guy at primarytech.fm. Speaking of Humane AI Pin, this is going to be a 30-second story. Ken Cosienda, who worked at Apple for 15 years. He was the inventor of iPhone autocorrect, author of the book Creative Selection, was working at Humane, and then unceremoniously, John Gruber, I think, pointed this out on Daring Fireball, basically added Humane to his past work. So seems like he is no longer at Humane.
Yeah.
Does not bode well, Jason.
And he didn't make any kind of announcement. It's just he updated his LinkedIn as you do and his Twitter bio as you do. But here's the thing. It's kind of like, it's actually brilliant. And actually his book, Creative Selection, is absolutely one of the best reads, especially if what you want to know is like some of the lore of how the iPhone became a thing, because he was there at that time.
It's the best.
And but it's sort of like when you leave a company and you're not supposed to, they really frown on you talking about it. You just update your Twitter bio and everyone will find, especially when you're Ken Cosienda, people will know.
Yes, it's like, I don't know, maybe he had to sign an NDA or whatever, so he just put it in his Twitter bio. But yeah, so listen, it's not looking good for this guy. This guy, I don't even know. I almost feel weird putting it like in the background of videos now too, because I feel like it's going to generate a bunch of hate comments, and I'm going to get dislikes on videos.
Or catch fire, which could really be good for the views.
Well, that is true. That is true. Apple launched a new web page on their site called Help Me Choose. So if you ever need help choosing a Mac, I thought it would be fun to just do this real quick. It'll suggest a Mac for you. I actually haven't done this. Have you played around with this?
I've done it a whole bunch of times, and I have some thoughts, but go ahead.
Oh, really? Well, let's see. Okay, it's asking you. I'm going to, for the audio listeners, if you watch this, you can see the website on YouTube. But all right, it says to tell us, what will you use your Mac for? Essentials, work, education, or creative hobbies? I'll go with creative hobbies, I guess. That I imagine video will be in there. How do you get creative outside of work? Editing photos, creating content, designing, coding, making music, making videos. I'm going to do making videos. I guess this is not. You can't choose multiple. It seems like Oh no, you can't select multiple. Okay, I didn't know. And where will you use your Mac? I'm going to say in a fixed place. I like a desktop computer. Will you plug in any of the following? Displays, external storage, media equipment, all the things. I plug in everything to my computer. Lastly, do you have a budget in mind? Oh boy, Jason, here we go. I'll say $3,500 is the budget. Let's see what it recommends. Finding your perfect matches. Yep. I see the little magic symbol, the little stars. Mac Mini. The first recommendation is a Mac Mini for $1,300. Then a 16-inch MacBook Pro. Jason, I am offended and appalled that they did not recommend the Mac Studio. I'm going to change my budget. I'm going to say, give me whatever.
Yeah. I mean, can you buy a Mac Studio for less than $3,500?
It starts at $3,000, I thought. No, it starts at $2,000. It starts at, look, even with a budget of $3,500, it's not recommending the Mac Studio.
Because you said creative hobbies, Stephen.
Now, wait a minute.
Creative hobbies.
Look, I mean, I said, what do you do? Tell us what you will use this.
Creative hobbies.
Oh,
Stephen.
Because I said hobby. Okay, well, let me do work. You can select. Let me do work and creative hobbies. Yeah, I do all the things. I do audio
You didn't
production.
select any of them.
Oh, I see. Oh, there's so many things I have to select. I see now. I have to select all the things. So yeah, I create the content. I make the videos. Okay. And almost finished. I see a racing flag now. Final oh, I get more questions now. Mm-hmm. Where will you use? I'm in a fixed place like my desk. Will you plug in anything? Yeah, I plug in everything. And then what is your budget? Whatever you want.
I don't know. You up my credit card limit. I have all the money, Apple. You tell me how much my budget is.
And, there it is. The Mac Studio. Now it recommends. See, starts at $2,000. M2 Max, 32 gigs of unified memory, 512 SSD, which is a crime. That's a crime.
512 SSD. You told that you had all the money and it recommended a 5. This is my problem. Why did it recommend a 512 SSD? Maybe because you said you're going to plug in external storage, I guess.
Yeah, but that's but anyway. Well, okay. So you have to tell it. Listen, this is not just a hobby. this is my job. And then it'll recommend the Mac Daddy, as it says. So okay. Well, what are your thoughts on this website?
Well, as I went through this a bunch of times, and the funny thing was, so I just proved that this is not exclusively, but every time, regardless of what I chose as my budget, it just picked the thing closest to that. And I was like, so none of the other questions actually matter. Just tell us how much money you're going to spend. Now, in your case, you told that you had all the money and it still only recommended you a $2,000 computer, which, fine. That's great. That actually adds some credibility to it. And so it does feel like it's pretty good. It's hard for you and I to take it seriously because we already should be able to predict exactly what these answers should be, right? Like, because people ask us this all the time. And so I think it's actually great. I think it's for people who are trying to figure it out. And what I like about this is it is essentially telling us what Apple thinks about these products, which is usually different than what we think about these products, right? The Mac Mini is a hobby thing that is very capable. Like you kind of stuck your nose up at it, but let's be honest, an M2 Pro MacBook or Mac Mini is probably the most capable desktop most people should consider if they're not going to buy an iMac. That is true. Right? And
yeah.
And so you look at it that way, and maybe one of the reasons that it recommended you a $2,000 Mac Studio is your budget's $3,500. You still got to buy a studio display, right? That Mac Studio is useless without that. So I think it's great. True. I think it's super. Yeah. One of the things that Apple has done really well since the pandemic, during the pandemic and continuing on, is trying to recreate the in-store experience for people online, right? So they moved the Today at Apple classes online for quite a while. There are a lot of different experiences that you can have online. You can chat with like a representative. Like, if you're buying an iPhone and you're going through and you have questions, you can just like click on a thing and a person will start talking to you and they'll walk through your order with you. They've started to do a lot of these things. And this to me feels like it's the most logical next step, where it's like, help me choose the Mac, because there are a lot more Macs than there are iPads. I mean, they should do one of these for the iPads. It'd be real interesting to see what that would be interesting. Right there. What would you have to write about that? I'm going to write about help me choose an iPad. I cannot wait.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so new things in all the betas and the visionOS. I charged up my Apple Vision Pro. I put the beta 2.0 on it.
Yep.
And there's a few differences that are cool. I'm going to come back to spatial photos, because you were saying that was like the standout thing. But the new gestures, like to go home and control center, they're actually pretty cool, and I find them useful. You can rearrange the home icons, which it wasn't actually as difficult as I thought it would be. Like, it's pretty easy, like to tap and hold on an icon, drag it to either side, just like you do on your iPhone, your iPad. That was cool. I moved Juno from Christian Seelig all the way to the home screen so I could watch YouTube videos, as you do.
Yeah.
But the one feature that you said this was worth it, I saw a bunch of people saying was, and I was skeptical, the spatial photos, which basically means it will take photos that you have from the past. You didn't have to take them any special way, and it will use machine learning to cut out the subjects, figure out different depth maps of whatever's in the picture, and make the photo 3D. It's a subtle 3D effect, but very noticeable. And not only can you like see the picture and kind of move your head around a little bit to see the 3D effect, you can then enter kind of this panorama mode, which zooms the photo in and more like surrounds you. And I have to say, it is a very compelling feature. I did it on a couple photos, like family photos, as like with multiple people in the photo. It worked very well. and it's a very cool experience. I did try it on an old, like a really old photo, like from like my parents' wedding day. That photo did not cut out as well. Maybe, I don't know how it works with photos not taken on iPhone. Like if you just like scanned in an old photo, which is basically what this was, it was an old photo scanned in. It didn't really separate much of anything at all, but it wasn't super high quality photo, not high resolution, not taken on iPhone. So I'm curious if it can do it with that kind of stuff. But for photos taken on iPhone, it is very cool. I have to give you this one.
Well, and I want to just be clear. I don't know that this feature is worth it because again, the bar for buying a Vision Pro is very high, but it is, you know, I have said it previously that my favorite thing about using the Vision Pro, which I still use every day, it's actually sitting right over here. I still use it every day. I can't stop using it until I write the article, and I haven't had time to write I use the Vision Pro everyday article. So wow. I'm sticking to the bit. But the panoramic photos in my mind before were just like the fact that like I just tell, even if you don't think you're ever going to buy a Vision Pro, every time you go somewhere cool, take a panoramic photo, because then if you ever have a chance to look at them on a Vision Pro or whatever comes after it, just unreal. So these are so good, Stephen. Like it's in I did it with photos I took with like my Nikon and from Lightroom, exported them from Lightroom into the Photos library and did it, and it's fine because what it's essentially doing is just mapping it into two stereo image so that you have one for each eye, because that's the 3D effect. It doesn't even have to do that much. It's like just creating two different versions of it and showing one version to one eye and one version to the other eye, and that gives you that spatial effect. They're really careful not to call it 3D images. They're calling them spatial photos, but it is just so good. Like it was almost visceral, especially if you have people, that if you have a person that's essentially the image is full size of what that person would be standing in your room and you make it spatial, it's like you're in I feel like you do lose a little bit of resolution when it does that. Like it's, it doesn't have quite the same fidelity, which is understandable. It's like doing some voodoo stuff to it, to make it happen. But it's almost like you're standing at like what is the thing at Disney, the Wax Museum, the Hall of Presidents or whatever. Like, it's like, this is so real, but I mean, I know you're not a real person standing there. Like it was so good. And it does work with not people as well. So I should actually send you a couple of these. You'd probably lose your mind, but like I took some of the photos I took at WWDC and I made them spatial photos, and it was like you were there. It was just like, it's just unreal. So they nailed it with this one. And the fact that you no longer have to wear a Vision Pro in order to take spatial photos to look at. You can just use any photos. A super big win. Great feature. This is not a practical thing I've looked at more photos in the Vision Pro in the last couple of days than I've looked at on my iPhone or my Mac probably in a year.
That's interesting. I need to start taking more panoramas, because I will say that effect is very compelling also. And I took some when I used to travel more, working for a travel company, and so it is cool. Not worth it, but speaking of
not worth buying one, but yes, there you go.
Not worth buying it, but two other kind of follow-up news bits. There was a developer session at DubDub. I'll put the link. You can just watch this session if you would like. But there's third-party apps are actually going to have an API to build in spatial video and photo capture to the apps. So makers like Halide and other like video apps like Blackmagic Camera, I assume they can build in the ability to capture spatial photos and video. And so you won't have to use the stock camera app, which is cool. Maybe we'll see some fun apps and use cases from that. But also there was this news, and I do have to give this is MacRumors.com. Credit for this image where they have like the Apple Vision Pro kind of like shadowy, but it looks like the number 2, and it's about the Apple Vision Pro 2. Kudos to whoever made that image. Very good. This is actually quoting an information article, which I know Jason's about to say, like, this is not the original source. There was an information article, and I would share the information article, but look what this looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what it looks like to try and click an information article.
And it looks that way if you pay for the information too, by the way, as Gruber pointed out recently.
That's what I'm saying. Even if you pay for the information, it is a ridiculous amount of pop-ups and banners. So yeah, I'll put the link to the information article in the show notes. If you have a subscription, then maybe you can read it if you can get past all the banners. But anyway, Apple reportedly suspended work on Apple Vision Pro 2. And on the face of it, these headlines are like, oh, wow, Apple's giving up on Vision Pro. Not the case. And this is something that Mark Gurman, even on social media, was kind of correcting these headlines, being like, he stated the next Apple Vision product is going to be a cheaper version, not a quote-unquote pro version. And so the fact that they are stopping development or suspending work on Vision Pro 2 does not mean they are not making any Vision products anymore. It just means that Apple Vision Pro 2, the second generation of the high-end model, is likely farther out. I think Gurman said something like the end of 2026, which would be 2 years from now. And that the cheaper version, whatever it's called, Apple Vision Air, maybe just Apple Vision. What do you think? You think they put Air on the end or just Apple Vision?
I don't know, but this does make sense. They've got probably 500,000 of these things sitting in a warehouse somewhere that they haven't sold. So what are they working on the second one for?
That's right. And they'll be able to sell yours as refurbished ones if you ever send it back.
Actually, you're right. So there you go.
So there you go. But so this is not the case that Apple Vision Pro is like dead. It is just that the Pro model is probably farther out as a second generation, and that the cheaper version will be coming out in the interim, whenever that is. I think Gurman might have said next year, 2025, but we'll see. So, that's it. I don't even know if that's news. The news is that it's not news.
Well, what you just did is a service to sort of correct what people assumed was happening, which is that they are discontinuing the Vision product. That's not what they're saying. This would have almost been like if the reports had come out that, hey, Apple is pausing work on the successor to the HomePod, and people are like, there's not going to be any more HomePods. No, they just made the HomePod Mini first, right? And then they did come back and revamp the HomePod, the OG HomePod, the OG Pod.
Right.
And so that's kind of what they're doing with the Vision.
Right. So now I want to get into just little tidbits of iOS 18 and Apple Intelligence learnings from the last week or so. And first up, iOS 18, specifically HomeKit stuff. Number one, you can actually choose a home hub in iOS 18 come this fall. So, before home hubs are like Apple just chooses it, or, your smart home just chooses it at random. Sometimes it's a HomePod, sometimes it's an Apple TV, who knows?
Sometimes it's an iPad Pro that you leave the house with.
Sometimes it's the HomePod Mini at the farthest reaches of the house. So, and before, the only way to kind of like trick it into picking the hub you want is like unplugging all the things and then letting it find the Apple TV you want and then plugging everything back in, which is ridiculous. So coming in iOS 18, you'll actually be able to specify a specific home hub to be used, which is great. Thumbs up for that. Then the other smart home feature that was announced, this was actually announced during the keynote, and I was curious about this too, was when it comes to home key locks, and this is reported by Jennifer Toohey, that these new locks you'll be able to just walk up to and it will unlock based on your proximity. So, home key right now, you have to tap with your Apple Watch or your iPhone. Not physically tap, but wow, there's my thumbs up reaction. I forgot to turn reactions off. let me turn those off real quick. I can't even do it. Anyway, so, right now, home key, you have to tap your Apple Watch or your iPhone, and then it unlocks. And the new feature with iOS 18 is that just walking up to it by proximity, if you have a bunch of stuff in your hands and you can't tap a device, that the lock will just unlock automatically. Well, that's using a U1 chip, the ultra wideband chip, which is also what's in like AirTag and stuff like that for precision finding. But any and all home key locks that currently exist, and I've tested all 5 that are available in the U.S. right now. I literally have videos reviewing every one of them, and I have multiple installed right now.
Stephen moonlights as a locksmith, apparently. He's replaced so many smart locks.
I can replace the lock, no problem now. None of them are going to support this feature because this feature is going to require the ultra-wideband chip to be built into the lock, and none of these locks have that. So if you want this like open proximity feature, you're going to have to buy a new lock. And yes, I'll be reviewing them all. If and when they are available. A car is probably going to be one of the first out the gate, and then maybe level lock, but we'll see. So that's unfortunate, but that's how that works. Do you have a HomeKit lock? You don't do.
I do. Remember, it doesn't work. It just drops Wi-Fi, and it defeats the whole point of having.
Which one is it?
Should I say? I think it's the Level Lock Plus Pro Max Hub thing. I don't know what they call it.
You have the Level Lock Connect, the little thing too, the little white puck with it.
No, there's nothing like that. It's just connected to Wi-Fi.
It's actually not connected to Wi-Fi.
I mean, no, it's connected to Bluetooth or Thread or Matter or something.
It doesn't have Thread. What's it
Bluetooth connected to?
Don't get me started on this, Jason, because it's connected to Bluetooth to your HomePod or Apple TV, whatever's closer. That's what it communicates to for HomeKit.
So I have to basically put a HomePod next to my front door, is what you're saying?
Yes. And LevelLock actually released a newer model of their LevelLock Plus with Connect, which is this little white puck that supposedly gives the LevelLock Wi-Fi, but what it really does is connect to the lock via Bluetooth and then connect to your Wi-Fi network, and it acts as like a bridge.
So it's basically like what the Lutron stuff does. They have their own little router that connects by Ethernet to your network, and then they do their own little thing, which is way more reliable. Like, those things never fail, ever.
If you wanted something that connected to your Wi-Fi, the Yale Assure Lock 2 with Wi-Fi module, because you can get it with or without, that connects to Wi-Fi, and the Schlage Encode Plus connects to Wi-Fi, and the Schlage Encode Plus is the only HomeKey lock that has Thread built in. It's the only one. And that one actually has the fastest response time because of Thread. So,
well, my thing is they sent it to me to review, and my review is it does a really good job of keeping people out. It's a deadbolt lock, but it also unfortunately keeps us out because we can't unlock the door without a key, and none of us know. We don't carry keys. Like, although that, to be fair, they give you cards, like hotel room cards. Yes. Those still work, right? Because those are just like NFC or whatever. But that's why I'm like, shouldn't my Apple Watch just NFC work? And none of it works. I mean, but again, it is a lock. It's just not very smart.
I will put my video in the show notes of reviewing all the HomeKey locks, because
that'd be great.
There you go. You could see that there. The Passwords app in iOS 18. Apparently, there's not going to be a way to favorite items in the Password app, which is unfortunate. I do think the Passwords app that needs like a favorited section for most used things. But apparently on the Mac OS Sequoia, the Passwords app will have a menu bar tool, so you can access your iCloud passwords from the menu bar, and that will remember your recently used passwords. So you'll actually be able to see which ones you recently used. You can't favorite or pin them, but recently used ones will be in that menu bar passwords thing. So that's cool.
Couldn't you just make like a group and not share it with anybody?
That is a hacky way to do it, yes.
From the shortcuts guy, that is a hacky way to do it. From the guy who makes a short... Every time I say, can't you do this thing? He's like, well, you could make a shortcut that would do that. I'm going to write that down. That is a hacky way to do it.
That is a hacky way to do it. Listen, anyway. So that's that. Shortcuts. There's a bunch of new shortcuts actions that were discovered. Apple Books has a bunch of shortcuts, like you could change the page animation. My reactions keep popping up now. I thought I'd turn them off. So disable my reactions, my word. Books has some new actions. Reminders has some new actions. The if statement is going to have multiple conditionals, which is incredible. So yes, that's the one. Which means you'll be able to do like, if I am away from home and it's a weekday, then do these things. And before, if you wanted to do that in shortcuts, you had to like multiple if statements, and it was a pain in the neck. So anyway, if statement, that's going to be good.
I don't know what any of that means. I only have two shortcuts. One is text my wife that I'm headed home, and the other one is new article idea. That's it. Two. Those are good.
Listen. I tell people, even if there's one or two shortcuts that you use regularly, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
We talked last week, now going into the final Apple Intelligence Roundup, we talked last week about which way is the money going between OpenAI and Apple for the ChatGPT integration. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg reporting that there is no money going either way. And this was a theory that you had mentioned. I forgot who you cited last week, but it doesn't seem like there's any money exchanging hands. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. And so we'll see how long it is mutually beneficial and how long Apple will want, or when Apple will want ChatGPT to pay. But also, one of the things Tim Cook said during the keynote, I think it was Craig Federighi, is that one day, no, it wasn't either of them. I forgot who the presenter was, that you'll be able to access multiple LLMs built into Apple Intelligence. And, at that point, you might have assumed, they didn't state these names, but at that point you might have assumed Perplexity or Llama, And now it's like, well, maybe you won't have that many choices one day.
Right.
Because,
Well, so Craig Federighi did call out Google Gemini at the later conversation that he and JG did with iJustine. So they very clearly, they were like, we would like to have a deal with Google Gemini. If anyone out there is listening from Google Gemini, call us. We would like to talk to you. And we won't give you any money, but we would like very much to do a deal.
Right. You could also do the, just like an add-on. Google's already paying for the search engine default. Just do a little upgrade. You know what I mean? A little Apple One.
Can you just imagine the Eddy Cue phone call? Hey, we got a deal for you. No, we won't give you any money, but we got a deal for you. We're going to pay you an exposure. And as somebody who spent a lot of time as a photographer, that is the worst thing you could possibly hear is, oh, it'll be good for exposure. I can't pay my mortgage with exposure, by the way.
Did you see the Eddy Cue Sam Altman memes?
Yes.
That were going around? There was that one picture from DubDub.
The best thing about it is most people don't know that that's Eddy Cue, so they don't fully understand, like, this is the most shrewd negotiator that Apple has ever had, and he is like, he's the guy they send in,
He's the guy. I just think it's so, like, Eddy Cue used to be in the keynotes. If those
for
who
services,
would remember. For services, he would talk about the iTunes and then Apple Music. Sometimes he'd talk about stuff. And if you don't know what Eddy Cue looks like, here's the picture. I don't know why this was the first result. This is from Japan Times, but I'll put the link in the show notes.
We're paying them an exposure right now.
There you go. I scraped this website for this photo. Here's Eddy Cue on the right. And that's Sam Altman on the left. This was taken at DubDub. And the meme was, caption this. What is Eddy Cue telling Sam Altman? And I think one of the best one was someone said the Darth Vader quote, "I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it any further."
I mean, and to be fair, like, Eddy Cue is the guy who transformed the music industry. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, he is the person that made it happen that songs would be available in iTunes for 99 cents, right? Yes. And then over time, he is the person who is he is the negotiator for when they need a deal. Right. He is the services side of it anyway. I mean, it's Tim Cook or Jeff Williams if it's like we need to get this part made cheaper. That's different, but it's it's amazing how influential in the history of Apple. And yet he has a much lower profile than any of the other people. Like, he didn't even get to be on Phil Schiller's plane in the keynote. Like, that's just so disappointing.
Well, I mean, so I mean this respectfully, because Eddy Cue has not been in keynotes recently. Like, I haven't seen him in a while. And when that photo first started circulating around, I was like, oh man, Eddy Cue, he looks older, because it's been multiple years since I've seen him. So maybe that's why he wasn't in the plane. Although he could have been in the co-pilot seat next to Phil Schiller. He could have done that.
Oh, he could have. But I think he spends a lot of time, like, buying movies for Apple TV Plus. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a lot of what he does. And he goes to, like, the Hollywood stuff. And
well, I would love. I mean, this will never happen. But maybe one day we'll read an account of an Eddy Cue negotiation, because if you remember him from those older keynotes, like, he was like very jovial and bubbly, like not someone that you would think is like a vicious, ruthless negotiator. And even, there's pictures of him at like Golden State Warrior games, like on the front, like on the courtside seats, like yelling and being, gregarious, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I want to know what this guy is like in a negotiation. Like, does he just like turn it on and become like, I don't know.
I mean, the jovial ones are the most ruthless negotiators, because you feel really, really good about it, and the conversation goes really well, and then you get up and realize there was a blade through your chair, and now you're bleeding out on the floor.
You lost your pants, and you had no idea what happened.
It's like, what did we just agree to? He was smiling the whole time.
That is pretty true. He's like laughing, making jokes. You're signing stuff. He didn't even read the contract. That's pretty good. The last thing we'll talk about is Genmoji, but I just want to run through a couple of the things I discovered. We talked about the Apple Watch, and you have said for many months that the Apple Watch is the AI device that, who need, AI Pin, Apple Watch Ultra, like, you don't need it. So as far as Apple Intelligence and the devices it runs on, it's just the iPhone 15 Pro and M series iPads and Macs. But we did gather that the Apple Watch will get notification summaries on the watch, which is an Apple Intelligence feature. Now, unclear. I assume it has to be connected to a 15 Pro or 16 Pro when that comes out in order to get that. but it will have that one Apple Intelligence feature and maybe others, but it will have that one. So that's interesting. And also, I guess that's all. I'm reading my notes here.
That's it. Never mind. Pause.
That was it. Yeah, cut everything out.
Well, I think you're right. I think Eddy Cue was smiling at you. You got real distracted there for a minute, wondering what you just bought.
I started saying something else, and Eddy Cue's like, "No, don't say it.
Honey, do you know where the deed is to the house? Because I'm really nervous about Eddy Cue showing up right now. No, but I think it's. I mean, the watch is a very capable device on its own, but it is also an accessory of your phone. And so, if you can talk to. I went this whole episode without having to say it. You can talk to your iPhone without having to, you can do it on your watch. Then I would assume that connection will remain true with your watch. So even if you did have an older watch, but it was paired to an iPhone 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max or whatever in the future, that you will still be able to do a lot of that stuff. Just the on-device stuff would be running on your phone. And then it makes total sense that notification summaries would happen on the watch because all it's doing is pushing a notification from your phone. The watch is not independently getting notifications. So.
Right. And you would not get it if you were on cellular on the watch, assuming it has to come.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. So last thing before we get to the poll, the personal tech part where our community voted on Magic Mouse versus trackpad and all of that, I'll put a couple of other articles in the show notes about private cloud compute. Apple had a long article about that. Jason had an awesome article about the Lego headquarters that he visited. I showed my kids.
The longest article I've ever written.
It was good. I read it and I showed my kids the pictures and I told them about the secret chambers with all the years of Lego sets. So yeah, which that picture wasn't in the article. That was an exclusive to Primary Technology. We showed that right here.
Well, so all the articles that were all the images that were in the article were from a photographer that was hired to come, and the one I gave you was a photo I took. So you guys got an exclusive Jason Aiton.
That's right.
Original.
That's right. Oh, and I just realized that was during the bonus episode. That actually wasn't even during.
That's right.
So there you go, bonus episodes. But you had an article. I'm going to share it, and you're just gonna see what I see, Jason. This is all I can do. This is your article, which is subscribe to Inc. Premium. Which I have to say, Inc. reasonable subscription when compared to the information and others. But let's see if I jump into reader mode. Oh, okay, there we go.
I was going to tell you that, but yeah, works real well.
You can jump into reader mode and I could just read the entire article. Don't do that. Pay for Inc.com. Support Jason. But
just
anyway,
click on a couple ads. Just go there and click on some ads. It'll be fine.
Just click on some ads.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of ads.
Yeah, that's funny. But you feel strongly about Genmoji and its success. So what do you feel about Genmoji?
Well, my biggest thing is like emoji was a specific standard. Right. Every year when they release a new standard of the Unicode standard, they add a certain number of emoji and everybody gets the same ones. Right. Every device that uses emoji. Well, maybe some devices limit it. But for the most part, if you're using the Unicode, like the emoji, they look different on Slack versus the Android versus an iPhone. But because they're based on text. Right. They're just a text code that the phone displays as a specific thing. And Apple just killed that. Basically, because now there is not that set group of emoji. You want the perfect emoji for something in the current library of, I think it's like almost 3,800 emojis doesn't have it. You can just make your own. You're just making up emoji. Like it's like there's this group of, it's like a consortium, right? And Apple's a part of it, and Meta's a part of it, and Google's a part of it, and like whatever are the ones that decide. Eddy Cue is in a room with Mark Zuckerberg, and he's like, "This is going to be a great emoji." Mark Zuckerberg's like, "I'm not sure," and he's like, "It's going to be great." And then that's how the emojis get picked. That's probably not true. But my point is, the pool of people who get to decide which emoji you should be able to use on your phone is now everyone with an iPhone.
Right.
Well, everyone with an iPhone that can do this, right? So it's
which
actually
is a 15 Pro,
right? But I think this is the thing, though, that's going to get your kids to be like, I need an iPhone 16. Can I please get an iPhone 16?
It just hit me as you were saying that. That's how the iPhone 16 becomes a super cycle.
Absolutely.
Is because probably not just the Pro. It will probably be the 16 and the 16 Pro. Put 8 gigs of RAM in there. Now the base model 16 can do Genmoji.
Yeah.
That's the super cycle.
Well, and historically, people, we do know that it's true that emoji are one of the things that get people to upgrade the operating system. Like people will upgrade to the new version of iOS because they will get access to the emoji. which to me, I use like 5 emoji. That's it. I don't need Genmoji. I don't need 3,800 of them. It's like thumbs up, smiley face, and I'm crying. I'm a parent. Listen, my emotional range is like pretty limited to this is cool. I'm really excited. What did you do now?
The inside out emotions, but as emoji.
Yes.
It's the 5
exactly.
thing.
Basically, that's about what it is. Although I don't text my children fear very often. I just want them to feel it on their own. Anyway, so I think that that's what's going to get people to actually buy phones. Is now you have that. So
there you go. That's probably it. All right, final segment, our personal tech. I want to show the poll because we talked about my appreciation for the Magic Mouse. Had a lot of people say they also use it, and in our poll here in the community, which you can still go in and vote if you want to jump in there. It's the pinned post in the conversations space. Magic Mouse got 21%, Magic Trackpad 25%. And that tied with the MX Master Mouse, also at 25%. And there was a couple that also used a trackball mouse, which, listen, I've seen trackball mice. I've tried to use it. Kudos to you who make it work. I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
My brain is not capable of figuring out that logistics. I can't.
Yeah, I can't do it. And then there were some other models that people said in there in the comments, so you can go check that out. But yeah, Magic Trackpad and MX Master were tied, but still people use the Magic Mouse. It's not nobody.
I've been using one for a little bit. I'm giving it another shot.
Oh, okay, there you go. I mean, look, it's right there. It's what I do. A lot of people said on Threads and X, like they really like the Magic Mouse. It just needs to either be, charged so you don't have to flip it over, or Apple should just make a wireless charging pad for a new model Magic Mouse. So this way you could just put it on the pad at night, take it off. I'd be down for that. Sell it for $50.
Okay, that's a good point. Now, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this. But if the argument is I can't use my Magic Mouse when it's charging because I have to turn it over, you still couldn't do that while it's charging wirelessly. And on that note, I actually heard, I think it was Gruber maybe responding to the MKBHD Tim Cook interview where he asked him about it, where it's like, this design is actually intentional. I never thought about it this way. This design is intentional. Apple doesn't want you using the mouse while you're charging it. That's why it's like that, and that's why it's not going to change, because they just want you to plug it in for 5 minutes and then use it. They don't want you to be, it's a wireless mouse. You don't, right? They don't make wired mice anymore. So that's the reason that it's going to be that way. But the way the wireless one though would fit that, right? The wireless charging, because you couldn't use the mouse while it's charging, so.
And this way, like I wouldn't have to keep one lightning cable around for my Magic Mouse, and my Magic Keyboard needs it too, which Apple. USB-C peripherals. Come on, let's go.
Yep.
Also Apple MagSafe battery pack. I would get an updated version if it had USB-C. Just throwing that out there. AirPods Max. I don't know if I'd buy one with USB-C. We'll see. So, all right, we're going to go to our bonus episode. I'm not sure. I want to talk about the light phone, actually. And then we might also touch on at what age do you give a kid a device? Because Jason and I both have multiple kids. We've had to wrestle with this, and then our bonus listeners can weigh in once they hear it. But if you want to hear that bonus episode and get access to all the past bonus episodes, you can support the show directly on Apple Podcast or go to primarytech.fm and click bonus episodes there. Support us through Memberful. Join the community. You can cast your vote for the Magic Mouse and also leave comments on the episode posts that go up or start a new discussion. It's a great place there, and you can DM Jason and I or email the other guy at primarytech.fm. That's fine. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcast. If you haven't yet, we appreciate you all for doing that. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.